I let you be me. Then it too late. A-B-T-E-F-G.
You singing your ABCs? You know your You know your ABCs? All right, well, say your ABCs. Okay. Go ahead, say them.
Daddy.
You gonna say ABCs? So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now Trey knows his ABCs. Next time Trey should sing with Daddy. Welcome to the MasterMind Library. I am. They call me Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and one of your hosts of the MasterMind Library, home of the MasterMind Book Club. Hey, if that's on, please turn that off. Let's make sure this is off too. So, we are on episode 118 in chapter 18 of Simulacra Simulation. But before we go any further, Trey, would you like to introduce yourself?
I got Mickey Mouse now.
Oh, you like Mickey Mouse?
I got Mickey Mouse and too.
Oh, that's what you want to watch on TV is Mickey Mouse?
Mickey Mouse, no.
Well, right now we're doing the MasterMind Library. We got to come to Mickey Mouse another time. All right. So in the meantime, why don't you tell our audience who we have in the live audience? Who's here? Who's over there?
Dada.
Who's that?
Didi.
Who's that?
Huey.
Very good. Good job. All right. So we got Elijah, Huey, and Sincere in our live audience. So today we are on our last episode of Simulacra Simulation. This is our last chapter, chapter 18. Yep. That's what so we're gonna go ahead and go there in the book.
Now.
Yep, on nihilism, right? Chapter 18. And,
Chapter 18 now.
Chapter 18. And we are going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so Trey, you gonna
Trey and
Yep.
And Daddy.
Yep.
How are you?
Yep, on the MasterMind Library. Very good.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and make this so that everybody can see it easy. Last chapter. All right. All right, Trey. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading, okay? On nihilism. Nihilism no longer wears the dark, Wagnerian, Spenglerian, fuliginous colors of the end of the century. It no longer comes from a Welton Chang of decadence, nor from a metaphysical radicality born of the death of God and of all the consequences that must be taken from this death. Today, nihilism is one of transparency, and it is, in some sense, more radical, more crucial than in its prior and historical forms, because this transparency, this irresolution, is indissolubly that of the system and that of all the theory that still pretends to analyze it. When God died, there was still Nietzsche to say so, the great nihilist before the eternal and the cadaver of the eternal, but before the simulated transparency of all things, before the simulacrum of the materialist or idealist realization of the world in hyperreality. God is not dead. He has become hyper-real. There is no longer a theoretical or critical God to recognize his own. The universe and all of us have entered live into simulation, into the malefic, not not even malefic, indifferent sphere of deterrence. In a bizarre fashion, nihilism has been entirely realized no longer through destruction, but through simulation and deterrence.
Hey,
All
I
right.
like
Let's see.
it now.
Oh yeah, you like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's cool. The universe and all of us have entered live into simulation, into the malefic, not even malefic, indifferent sphere of deterrence in a bizarre fashion. Nihilism has been entirely realized no longer through destruction, but through simulation and deterrence. From the active, violent phantasm, from the phantasm of the myth and the stage that it also was. Historically, it has passed into the transparent, falsely transparent operation of things. What then remains of a possible nihilism in theory? What new scene can unfold where nothing in death could be replayed as a challenge, as a stake? We are in a new and without a doubt insoluble position in relation to prior forms of nihilism. Romanticism is its first great manifestation. It, along with the Enlightenment's revolution, corresponds to the destruction of the order of appearances. Surrealism, Dada, the absurd, and political nihilism are the second great manifestation, which corresponds to the destruction of the order of meaning. The first is still an aesthetic form of nihilism, dandyism. The second, a political, historical, and metaphysical form, terrorism. These two forms no longer concern us except in part, or not at all. The nihilism of transparency is no longer either aesthetic or political, no longer borrows from either the extermination of appearances, nor from extinguishing the embers of meaning, nor from the last nuances of an apocalypse. There is no longer an apocalypse. Only aleatory terrorism still tries to reflect it. But it is certainly no longer political, and it only has one mode of manifestation left that is at the same time a mode of disappearance: the media. Now, the media are not a stage where something is played, they are a strip, a track, a perforated map of which we are no longer even spectators, receivers. The apocalypse is finished. Today it is the procession of the neutral, of forms of the neutral, and of indifference. I will leave it to be considered whether there can be a romanticism, an aesthetic of the neutral therein. I don't think so. All that remains is the fascination for desert like and indifferent forms, for the very operation of the system that annihilates us. Now, fascination, in contrast to seduction, which has attached to appearances and to dialectical reason, which was attached to meaning, is a nihilistic passion par excellence. It is the passion proper to the mode of disappearance. We are fascinated by all forms of disappearance, of our disappearance, melancholic and fascinated. Such is our general situation in an era of involuntary transparency. I am a nihilist. I observe. I accept. I assume the immense process of the destruction of appearances and of the seduction of appearances in the service of meaning, representation, history, criticism, etc. That is the fundamental fact of the 19th century, the true revolution of the 19th century, of modernity, is the radical destruction of appearances, the disenchantment of the world, and its abandonment to the violence of interpretation and of history. I observe, I accept, I assume. I analyze the second revolution, that of the 20th century, that of postmodernity, which is the immense process of the destruction of meaning. equal to the earlier destruction of appearances. He who strikes with meaning is killed by meaning. The dialectic stage, the critical stage is empty. There is no more stage. There is no therapy of meaning or therapy through meaning. Therapy itself is part of the generalized process of indifferentiation. The stage of analysis itself has become uncertain, aleatory. Theories float. In fact, nihilism is impossible because it is still a desperate but determined theory, an imaginary of the end, a Weltanschauung of catastrophe. Analysis is itself perhaps the decisive element of the immense process of the freezing over of meaning, the surplus of meaning that theories bring. Their competition at the level of meaning is completely secondary in relation to their coalition in the glacial and four-tiered operation of dissection and transparency. One must be conscious that, no matter how the analysis proceeds, it proceeds toward the freezing over of meaning. It assists in the procession of simulacra and of indifferent forms. The desert grows. Implosion of meaning in the media. Implosion of the social in the masses. Infinite growth of the masses as a function of the acceleration of the system. Energetic impasse. Point of inertia. A destiny of inertia for a saturated world. The phenomena of inertia are accelerating, if one can say that. The arrested forms proliferate, and growth is immobilized in excretions. Such is also the secret of hypertele, of what goes further than its own end. It would be our own mode of destroying finalities, going further, too far in the same direction. Destruction of meaning through simulation, hypersimulation, hypertele, denying its own end through hyperfinality. The crustacean, the states of Easter Island. Is this not also the obscene secret of cancer? Revenge of excretions on growth, revenge of speed on inertia. The masses themselves are caught up in a gigantic process of inertia through acceleration. They are this excretion devouring process that annihilates all growth and all surplus meaning. They are this circuit short circuited by a monstrous finality. It is this point of inertia and what happens outside this point of inertia that today is fascinating, enthralling, gone, therefore, the discrete charm of the dialectic. If it is nihilistic to privilege this point of inertia and the analysis of this irreversibility of systems up to the point of no return, then I am a nihilist. If it is nihilistic to be obsessed by the mode of disappearance and no longer by the mode of production, then I am a nihilist. Disappearance of aphanesis, implosion, fury of Verschwindens. Transpolitics is the elective sphere of the mode of disappearance, of the real, of meaning, of the stage, of history, of the social, of the individual. To tell the truth, it is no longer so much a question of nihilism and disappearance. In the desert-like, aleatory, and indifferent form, there is no longer even pathos, the pathetic of nihilism, the mythical energy that is still the force of nihilism, of radicality, mythic denial, dramatic anticipation. It is no longer even disenchantment with this seductive and nostalgic itself enchanted tonality of disenchantment. It is simply disappearance. The trace of this radicality of the mode of disappearance is already found in Adorno and Benjamin, parallel to a nostalgic exercise of the dialectic, because there is a nostalgia of the dialectic. And without a doubt, the most subtle dialectic is nostalgic to begin with. But more deeply, there is in Benjamin and Adorno another tonality, that of a melancholy attached to the system itself, one that is incurable and beyond any dialectic. It is this melancholia of systems that today takes the upper hand through the ironically transparent forms that surround us. It is this melancholia that is becoming our fundamental passion. It is no longer the spleen or the vague yearnings of the fin de siècle soul. It is no longer nihilism either, which in some sense aims at normalizing everything through destruction. The passion of resentment. Two, no melancholia is the fundamental tonality of functional systems, of current systems of simulation, of programming and information. Melancholia is the inherent quality of the mode of the disappearance of meaning, of the mode of the volatilization of meaning in operational systems. And we all are melancholic. Melancholia is the brutal disaffection that characterizes our saturated systems. Once the hope of balancing good and evil, true and false, indeed of confronting some values of the same order. Once the more general hope of a relation of forces and a stake has vanished. Everywhere, always, the system is too strong, hegemonic. Against this hegemony of the system, one can exalt the ruses of desire, practice revolutionary micrology of the quotidian, the quotidian, exalt the molecular drift, or even defend cooking. This does not resolve the imperious necessity of checking the system in broad daylight. This only terrorism can do. It is the trait of reversion that effaces the remainder, just as a single ironic smile effaces a whole discourse, just as a single flash of denial in a slave effaces all the power and pleasure of the master. The more hegemonic the system, the more the imagination is struck by the smallest of its reversals. The challenge, even infinitesimal, is the image of a chain failure. Only this reversibility without a counterpart is an event today. On the nihilistic and disaffected stage of the political, only it mobilizes the imaginary. If being nihilistic is carrying to the unbearable limit of hegemonic systems, this radical trait of derision and of violence, this challenge that the system is summoned to answer through its own death, then I am a terrorist and nihilist in theory, as the others are with their weapons. Theoretical violence, not truth, is the only resource left us. But such a sentiment is utopian, because it would be beautiful to be a nihilist if there were still a radicality, as it would be nice to be a terrorist if death, including that of the terrorist, still had meaning. But it is at this point that things become insoluble, because to this active nihilism of radicality, the system opposes its own, the nihilism of neutralization. The system is itself also nihilistic, in the sense that it has the power to pour everything, including what denies it, into indifference. In this system, death itself shines by virtue of its absence. The Bologna train station, the Oktoberfest in Munich, the dead are annulled by indifference. That is where terrorism is the involuntary accomplice of the whole system, not politically, but in the accelerated form of indifference that it contributes to imposing. Death no longer has a stage, neither phantasmatic nor political, on which to represent itself, to play itself out, either a ceremonial or a violent one. And this is the victory of the other nihilism, of the other terrorism, that of the system. There is no longer a stage, not even the minimal illusion that makes events capable of adopting the force of reality. No more stage either of mental or political solidarity. What do Chile, Biafra, the boat people, Bologna, or Poland matter? All of that comes to be annihilated on the television screen. We are in the era of events without consequences and of theories without consequences. There is no more hope for meaning. And without a doubt, this is a good thing. Meaning is mortal, but that on which it has imposed its ephemeral reign, what it hoped to liquidate in order to impose the reign of the Enlightenment, that is, appearances. They are immortal, invulnerable to the nihilism of meaning or of non meaning itself. This is where seduction begins. Notes 1. There are cultures that have no imaginary except of their origin and have no imaginary of their end. There are those that are obsessed by both. Two other types of figures are possible. Having no imaginary except of the end, our culture, nihilistic. No longer having any imaginary, neither of the origin nor of the end, that which is coming, aleatory. 2. Cf. Nietzsche's use of the word resentment. Throughout thus spoke Zoroastra, trans, the end. And that concludes Simulacra Simulation. Powerful, powerful material. Breaks down the dream within the dream within the dream that many of us are living and don't really know it. On our next episode, episode 119, we'll be going into, well, I have the book over there. We'll be going into a new book. Well, it's not a new book, but it's Booker T. Washington's own life story and his life works, right? I have an original copy from 1901. It's from my grandmother who used to sit in this chair that I'm sitting in now, right? So this is my grandmother's chair. And oh yeah, yep. Yeah. Oh, they're paying attention?
Now.
Okay. All right. Elijah. Okay. Yep. Yep.
Daddy.
Oh, Daddy. Yep.
Trigger.
Very good.
Mickey Mouse.
And Mickey Mouse. Right. Okay. And so as I've said on many episodes on the MasterMind Library, this is why we do this. Each one of them is why we do this, right? This is why we do this. We want to make sure that the next generation is receiving the truth at an early age. And that's challenging to do because what we've been taught in schools and in religious institutions, in the political sphere, within the media, realms of media, throughout the world of civilized societies, what we have seen is a story play out that is not factual. This is the hard reality for many people that they're going to have to face in the very near future. This is real, that we've been taught lies. And if we teach our children the truth from an early age, it becomes a situation like what they talk about in the Bible, right? Raise up a child in the way that they should go, and when they're older, they won't depart, right? Well, we're raising children in this age in the actual truth, in the absolute truth, from as early an age as possible, and giving them a chance to be able to grow with the truth as their foundation. And that's a major challenge for many people, to be able to discover the truth first, to be able to live the truth thereafter, and to be able to teach it through their children through demonstration. These books will help you. The MasterMind Library is filled with books that will lead you down the pathway of the truth. I highly recommend y'all look down in the comments. Y'all look down in the description of these videos, and you'll see down in the description, we've got the MasterMind Library link. All the books in there are PDFs. There's a bunch of maps in there, ancient maps of North America, some maps of the world, celestial maps as well from a bunch of the ancient, I'm not even going to say ancient, let's say early European cartographers. right? So we've got a bunch of that information, and we like to use that information a lot of the times, the early European works, because many of the early Europeans, they were trying to make their name, so a bunch of them were trying their absolute best to put out the real truth, and then as we move forward, we start to see a bunch of the doctrine and materials that were created, having a bunch of censorship, a bunch of alterations and things of that nature. So we can discern the truth by becoming it, right? So change your vibration, raise your vibration, change up what you're consuming on a regular basis in entertainment, what you're consuming in food, what you're consuming in relationships with people, how you're communicating to yourself each day, the affirmations that you read to yourself every day, your meditation practices, your grounding, your 6 keys of life movement. All of this makes a difference on how you teach your children. But there is a massive amount of wealth that we can be giving our children every single day. And I want to help inspire you to achieve that. So on our next episode, we're going to be going into Booker T's life and his writings, his story. All right. Y'all be blessed and expose your gift.